broadcasting.
Blog Talk USA.
1012, and it gives me 1,250 feet. Exit again.
UA announced the arrival of their flight from Los Angeles and Chicago.
And welcome everybody to the TNT Show. Tony Tripiano with you. Richard Zombeck is here. And we share equal responsibility for the lunacy that we will present moving forward today. Now, with that said, Richard Zombeck, old man, the insanity that we share today is not necessarily a courtesy of our own minds or a figment of our imagination, but the reality of what is current day politics, and I wouldn't have it any other way, sir.
I'm with you there. You know, speaking of old man, it's kind of funny. I posted that article yesterday on Liberals Unite and on Huffington Post. It was the article about Chris Matthews, and the headline of the article was Chris Matthews has a clear conflict of interest when it comes to Bernie Sanders. And, you know, you and I have talked about this on the show, and it was posted on the front page of Politics. In fact, it's still up there today. But this is just one of the hundreds of comments that I got on this article. So you ready for this?
I am, Richard, sir.
Richard, you're just too young, I would guess. Matthews absolutely hates Hillary and thinks she's a big joke. What you're seeing is his frustration that Bernie is the only alternative. Richard, you're just too young. So I rarely respond to my own articles, but that one I just put, blame it on my youth. Strange assumption, not to mention condescending. I was around when Chris Matthews was working at the White House. I'm 52 years old, dude. Unless she's 80 years old, calling me too young isn't going to cut it. You know, unless you were around when FDR was here, you shouldn't be writing articles about politics.
Well, maybe you should have just taken it as a compliment. But no, I know where you're coming from. By the way, that was a very well done column. And if you feel like sharing some of the other comments, would love to hear them. But, you pointed out something yesterday that I wasn't aware of, that his Chris Matthews' wife is running for Congress in Maryland. And a lot of the people that are funding her campaign are the same people that are supporting Hillary Clinton. And, yeah, even if we put Chris Matthews above the fray on that, it still looks and smells like it should, right?
Well, and even, I mean, she worked for the Clinton Foundation also, Chris Matthews' wife.
Okay, well, that makes it that much sweeter. Keep going.
Right. And then dropped out of there. Dropped out of that to run in Maryland. And, Bloomberg also noted, Bloomberg News, not Mayor Bloomberg, pointed out that 2 years ago that there are 12 families that have donated to every single Clinton campaign and charity. And of those 12 families, 2 families have donated the most to the Clintons, are both funding Matthews' campaign. And so here's the thing, right? And we'll get to the comments in a minute, is that there's really nothing untoward or illegal about this, and it very well could, if we were going to stretch our imagination, be nothing more than a coincidence, right? But the fact of the matter is that Chris Matthews has been a total, I'm going to say dick, when it comes to Bernie Sanders, up until after the New Hampshire primaries. And he's been, by that, we're assuming that he's a Clinton supporter. And then, come to find out that his wife is running in Maryland, and that the same supporters of Clinton are supporting her. So, take it for what you will. The fact of the matter is that, going to the comments on the site, what I found most interesting was that a lot of people don't like Chris Matthews because he's rude and he cuts people off. And that's actually one of the reasons why I do like him.
I'm with you there.
Because, we don't see enough of that. We don't see enough of, hey, that's not true. Hey, you're completely full of it. We don't, what we typically see is someone coming on someone's news show, and they go, well, yeah, and I actually saw Obama putting babies on steaks on the White House lawn, and he's a cannibal, and that's what they do in Kenya. And, people like Hannity or even on MSNBC and CNN listen to that, and they just nod their head. Yeah, I see. Whereas Chris Matthews is going to go, hey, wait a minute, you're full of it. What are you trying to say here? He doesn't let people get away with stuff. And also, he does tend to talk over them when he wants his opinion to be heard. He definitely likes the sound of his own voice.
Well, you know what, and I don't mean to interrupt you and talk over you, but one of the privileges of hosting your show is that it's your show. And so if you want to make a point and someone's going to interrupt you, it's incumbent upon you to say no. I also want to actually share an example. A couple months back, Chris Matthews was interviewing Donald Trump. Donald Trump was avoiding answering questions at all costs. And Chris Matthews actually said, leave. Feel free to leave. But I'm not going to stop asking these questions until you answer them.
Right. He goes hard at people that aren't going to answer his questions. In that respect, he's very good at what he does. Another thing that was pointed out by a commenter was that Hardball sent out a tweet just before the New Hampshire primaries showing 4 polls side by side, and what they said with these polls was polling has Clinton and Sanders in a virtual tie. And what the poll actually showed side by side was Sanders up by 9, up by 15, up by 20, and up by 30 in the various polls. And the Hardball lead on the tweet to that polling data was that the two of them were in a virtual tie, when it had Sanders leading by 9 to 30 points in every single poll. So, what does that tell you? Now, the thing is that, from certain people, I got accused of being a Bernie supporter, of being a shill for Bernie, of, questionable journalistic integrity. One guy said, sorry, Richard, but that's a pant load. Bernie has gotten a great deal of positive press from MSNBC, including Matthews. Blah, blah, blah. Basically, you're full of crap. You're obviously shilling for Bernie. Things like that. And, whatever.
Have you noticed that people can't separate the difference between a Bernie Sanders comment that is not necessarily an anti-Hillary comment? If you say something good about Bernie, there's an assumption that you're being negative about Hillary, and nothing could be further from the truth. Not at any point during the dialogue did you attack Hillary Clinton yesterday or the day before when talking about this. You were going after Chris Matthews. But people automatically assume that if it's a pro-Bernie comment, then it has to be an anti-Hillary comment. People, wake up.
Well, and in respect to this article, it wasn't pro-Bernie or anti-Hillary. It was anti-Chris Matthews. Right?
That's the point. That's the point I'm trying to make here. But people turn it into an anti-Hillary thing all of a sudden.
Well, yeah, and I have an example of that from Liberals Unite. Richard Zombeck. Apparently, I do watch the show. I just don't agree with your protect Bernie at all cost attitude. Your premise might have some validity if you see Matthews and the other MSNBC crowd attacking Bernie. So there's a typical response right there, right? It has nothing to do with Bernie or Hillary. It has to do with the integrity at which Matthews is commenting or opining on this. So my response to this guy was, as usually, pretty snarky. Did I ever say I was defending Bernie, or did I say I didn't like the way Matthews was treating Bernie? It is, in fact, looking more like you haven't read past the headline. Take your time. We'll wait. That was my response to this Kevin guy.
Well, you're a lot kinder than I am, because when it's obvious to me that somebody either hasn't read my column or hasn't read a post or didn't click through on Twitter, I bash them with it, and so you're much nicer than I am. I don't really have time for people that assume. If you want to argue facts with me, I'll freaking do that all day long, Z. But don't, as you just said, don't read the headline and assume you know what I'm saying, or that you've crawled inside my head, or that you indeed read something you didn't read, because it's obvious, right?
Well, some of my favorite comments are, I'll write an entire article, and I'm pretty long form, and I go from anywhere from 800 to 3,000 words. So for the non-writers out there, that's about a page and a half to 4 pages, right, of writing. And there'll be the headline. I'll have the lead. I still spell it LEDE, like the old-timey news guys. And I'll get a comment saying, what you didn't address was such and such, or I wish you would talk about such and such. And I'll go back on and I'm like, paragraph 3, or paragraph 7. If you had read the article, you could have saved us all some time by not making irrelevant and ridiculous comments. I mean, that's what really gets me, is they go, well, what you really should be addressing. And then they go on for 3 paragraphs about their punditry and their little stump speech on how much they know, and I go, yeah, that was addressed here. So, next time read the article, moron, or Moran.
Moran. Anyway, it's a great column, Z. If you haven't put it up at tnztalk.com, put a link up there so people can go find it and read it, because it is very well done, and perhaps they can comment on their own. But it really is a good piece, and I enjoyed it a great deal. Some of the other things that are going on this morning that we should follow up on certainly is some of the news that happened yesterday. And some of that news is, kind of interesting. And as we expected after, the New Hampshire results, a couple things happened. Let's listen.
Breaking right now, Carly Fiorina, the only woman left in the Republican field, I guess the only one from the beginning, has just announced she too is dropping out. Ed Henry's still with us. Ed, this should come as a big surprise to no one. It has felt like over the last weeks, even months for that matter, that her main job has been Secretary of State Hillary Clinton attacker-in-chief, former Secretary of State, and now she says in a Facebook post, today I'm suspending my campaign. My full statement is here on Facebook. If you want to go see it, you can go see it. But from the category of things that are not surprising but really weren't expected at this moment, we bring you that.
Yes, because of a big turnabout in 12 hours or so, because last night here in New Hampshire, Carly Fiorina said she's staying in, and her supporters were cheering. She was in the single digits, but she was hopeful that maybe down south she would keep this going, but abruptly here announcing she's not going to keep it going. I think what it means more than anything, when you hear that on top of the news of Chris Christie apparently suspending his campaign, as you noted at the top, this field is winnowing, and there are going to be Republicans around the country saying, good. No offense to Carly Fiorina or Chris Christie, but there has been a frustration from some grassroots Republicans around the country saying there's simply been too many people on the stage, and for the people who want to stop Donald Trump, they want to see an establishment candidate, folks.
The dominoes in the Republican race for president keep falling. First, Carly Fiorina earlier today. Now, a source close to Chris Christie's campaign says the New Jersey governor is suspending his presidential campaign. His announcement coming after hinting at this decision last night after a disappointing 6th-place finish in yesterday's New Hampshire Republican primary. Let's bring in CNN political director David Chalian. David, what have you learned?
So there was a conference call just a few moments ago where the entire Christie campaign staff had convened on this conference call. That is where they were notified that Governor Christie will be suspending his campaign for president. This is after Governor Christie made calls to donors throughout the day, to friends, to supporters, as he was working through what he said last night in New Hampshire. He and Mary Pat, his wife, were going home to New Jersey to reassess where things stand. That reassessment happened all day long, lots of phone calls, and now, just now, the campaign staff has been notified he is suspended.
There was some analysis that came after that, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to play it right now, Z. Listen, neither one of them are necessarily a surprise, and for Chris Christie, what really sucks is now he's got to go back to work in a state that hates him.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking the same thing. And as far as Fiorina goes, oh my God, thank you, Jesus.
Well, it's interesting. If you read her little Facebook post, which was well written, by the way, I'll give her that. And she, certainly, I thought did a credible job, especially lately.
And I want to let everyone know our hosts are back. So we will bow out and give you back to the TNZ of TNZ Talk. Tony, are you there?
Brianna and Michael, thank you so much.
There we go.
Z, are you there?
You're very welcome.
Z dropped off, but that's all right. He'll dial back in. I want to thank Michael and Brianna for picking up the slack while we're having some technical difficulties. But with that being said, it's fascinating as we take a look at the political landscape the day after New Hampshire, and you'll recall that it was only just a couple weeks ago that I was saying Iowa and New Hampshire didn't matter. I think that I was wrong. I think I was wrong in a big way, but not quite sure in what way. And that's, I think, what we are trying to figure out as we take a look at the way this is breaking down. I, for one, am not surprised by Bernie's win in New Hampshire in any way, shape, or form, or the size of the win in New Hampshire. But the media doesn't seem to be on the same page that I am, but that's all right. I'm assuming I've got Z back with me now.
I am here.
Good. All right. Well, anyway, again, our thanks to Michael and Rihanna for picking up the slack while you and I got the boot from our service provider. But with that being said, Z, I had played some audio of Fiorina and Christie bowing out, and obviously it was time for them. The point, the comment that I had made is, for Christie, the tough news is that he's got to go back to a state that doesn't want him. His approval rating's in the toilet. There was some analysis after that audio I played about whether or not his domestic situation hurt him, but they were saying no, that it didn't, that he just wasn't resonating with the electorate in a way that would have mattered. And, we can take that 6 different ways to Sunday. Fiorina, was another point that I was making, is that they were keeping her around, that they were actually funding her campaign. They would be GOP establishment to go after Hillary Clinton. And when it became clear that they didn't really need her to do that anymore, one of the things that is being discussed this morning is that they may use her as an attack dog, if you will, against Donald Trump.
Yeah, they could. I mean, the thing, there's a couple things. One, with Christie, it turns out that his legal worries with Bridgegate and court appearances notwithstanding, because they are pursuing this, that all of that is also going to fall right around the time that he would need to be campaigning the hardest. So, he's been subpoenaed to court. He's going to have to appear in court. All of this is going to come right around the time. And that all happened around the New Hampshire primary, right? That this was announced and when the court dates were for June and April and May. So, right around the time that he would be affected by that if he were, by some miracle to get the Republican nomination. And the other thing that was really odd was that he made no speech. He put out like a Facebook post and a Twitter announcement that he was bowing out of the campaign. He didn't get on stage. He didn't answer questions. He didn't say anything, and that is really kind of odd for a presidential candidate. Usually, when they bow out, they have something to say. They do a short presser, even if they don't take direct questions from the press. They say something. So, there was some speculation as he doesn't want to answer questions. He doesn't want to, and this is a guy that was supposed to be tougher than Trump and be able to beat up Trump, who was afraid of taking questions. For all intents and purposes, that's what it looks like.
Well, Carly Fiorina also did not make a public statement, and he didn't have a presser or anything either. Just the comment on Facebook and a simple comment on Twitter. And I really don't know, how to analyze that. Some of it might just be, I don't know, simple embarrassment. Don't want to face the media. Don't want to necessarily answer what would be obvious questions. I don't think there are going to be any zingers in there. But listen, it's hard enough to walk away from.
Well, I've got a zinger.
Well, let's hear it.
There's a zinger from Thomas Ferraro, who is a Duke University professor specializing in American literature and modern to contemporary novels. Obviously not a Fiorina supporter. This is what he said. To be clear, Carly Fiorina felt that she had the right to choose to abort her campaign just before her third primary because she either didn't want to carefully carry full term or because she realized it wasn't viable and therefore a risk to her political health.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I find that as entertaining as you do, but I guess. Well, as somebody that I know well said after I posted yesterday that she was suspending her campaign, that the constant lying. And we'll remember how she was quadrupling down in every lie she told. Obviously didn't serve her well. And you and I speculated weeks ago that this would end up catching up with her. I would suggest it did. And I'll use, in fact, New Hampshire as an example. After the debate where she supposedly did well, she actually had showed up as number 2 in the polling in New Hampshire on the Republican side of the aisle. And that didn't last very long when she insisting on being right, even though it was clear that she was wrong.
And she does that consistently. I mean, you could show her a video of her saying something, and she would look at that and say, that's not me.
Yeah, it was insane. Well, let's play a little more audio. This one, Alabama congressman, his name escapes me, but they'll identify him at the beginning of this piece, talking about South Carolina, Donald Trump, and, well, it'll be obvious who this congressman supports.
It's the story out of New Hampshire, but Cruz is touting his third-place finish in a state that isn't too friendly to many evangelical candidates. In fact, he had a little bit of snark for reporters this afternoon about that third-place finish.
Well, I am looking forward to a week of wall-to-wall coverage on Fox News at the impressive third-place finish which Marco Rubio got, so I'm sure that's what we're going to see on every show on Fox today, the shockingly impressive third-place finish of Cruz.
Ted Cruz having a little fun there with the media. Joining me now is Alabama Congressman Mo Brooks, who is supporting Ted Cruz. Congressman Brooks, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Obviously, the campaign that was Senator Cruz's way of, I think, needling a few of my colleagues in the media. But let me ask you, do you guys view third place as an impressive showing in New Hampshire?
Well, it's better than fourth or fifth, which is where Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio sit, but it's not first or second, which is a better place to be. Let me mention something by way of background. I'm a native South Carolinian, having been born in Charleston, and now I represent the state of Alabama in the United States Congress. But I'll tell you, in South Carolina, I think Ted Cruz is going to do very, very well, provided we're able to help voters understand the differences between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump, bearing in mind that it's it's pretty much a two-person race. Ted Cruz is the only one who can stop Donald Trump. So if you don't like Donald Trump, Ted Cruz is where you need to go.
That's an interesting way you just put it, which is providing voters understand the differences. What do you think is what are the biggest differences between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump?
Well, there are a lot of differences between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. For example, eminent domain. Ted Cruz understands that it's only be used for public purposes like roads, things of that nature, while Donald Trump wants to expand it where a developer can use the government to condemn someone's home so that the developer can make a profit. That's not what eminent domain is for. And we in the South, we don't want the government intervening in our lives in that fashion. On health care, Donald Trump wants to go beyond Obamacare and have socialized medicine, which in turn means that you're going to have to dramatically increase taxes. That is not Ted Cruz's position. When it comes to persona, I'm going to have to be careful how I say this, but Donald Trump has used a gutter-mouth approach to politics over the past week, where in front of children he's used the F word on national TV. He's referred to one of his opposition candidates in a slang way, referring to females' genitalia. We don't take kindly to that kind of persona in the South, and I really anticipate that a lot of Donald Trump's antics are going to come home to roost, and I anticipate that you're going to see Ted Cruz doing very, very well in the South because we don't cotton to those kind of values that Donald Trump is expressing.
Well, Congressman, I think there's a lot of Iowa Republicans that would have said that. A lot of New Hampshire Republicans would have told me the same thing. Why do you think it's going to be different this time?
Well, in the South, we have, as you look at the demographics and the breakdown of who we are as a people, we care about people who conduct themselves with some sense of decorum, which Donald Trump does not. And we do care about public policy issues such as welfare and nationalized health care and higher taxes and eminent domain. And, for example, if the people understand that Donald Trump, although he goes ballistic on illegal aliens, his policy, his actual words is he's going to build this great wall with a big door, and after we spend billions of taxpayers' dollars deporting all these illegal aliens, Donald Trump is going to let them right back in. That's amnesty. And the people in the South, we want people to be law-abiding, and we don't cotton to amnesty where we're going to let, under Donald Trump's proposal, illegal aliens to come back in and take our jobs and suppress our wages.
All right, Professor Zombeck, we don't cotton. You don't know do you have any idea what the foundation of that statement is? We don't cotton. I mean, I know what it means. I'm just kind of curious how it came about.
Y'all ain't going to get away with that. You can't do that here around here, and I just don't want you to. You can't come into my backyard and change things around like that. And I don't know about you, Tony. I lived in the South for a little while, and this attitude of like, well, we're just so pure and virginal down here that, I'm just so offended. It's just. Look, I was talking about this with my wife yesterday because I was really laughing about it, and I looked at her. I said, listen, I was 35 years old when I lived in the South, and I was dating women my own age, and they all had kids in college. So the purity and morality of the South, it's the Bible belt buckle. I'll give you that. I lived in North Carolina, and and South Carolina is much more evangelical and fundamentalist. And they had there was a panel on this morning where they were asking. There were about 10 of them, and they all saw. It was interesting because they all saw that Trump would win, but they were all going to vote for Ted Cruz, all but one. Right?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, every single one of them said, well, I think Donald Trump is going to win. Well, who are you voting for? Ted Cruz, Ted Cruz, Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Ted Cruz, And I think he's going to it's going to be surprising. I mean, I do I definitely see the issue with his brashness and his ego and his vulgarity, that there are going to be certain roadblocks he's going to come across this country where, people just don't cotton to that, Tony. And I think his biggest obstacle in South Carolina is going to be my favorite Republican, Lindsey Graham. Oh, I got the vapors. I I think that's going to be his biggest obstacle. Is Lindsey Graham basically going for anything that's not Trump? He's got a real hair across his butt when it comes to Donald Trump, and I think we're going to hear a lot more from Lindsey Graham. And quite frankly, I can't wait, because I love when Lindsey Graham goes into his Southern Belle, frantic, little spasmodic rants.
Well, the other thing that we should probably briefly touch on is this idea that it's a two-person race, and you have to ask yourself the obvious question. At some point, they want you to believe that this is a two-person race. Is it? In South Carolina, that is.
Well, Kasich is making some headway. Little by little, he's leading the bottom of the pack. Ted Cruz, they were talking about it on the New Hampshire wrap-up, and to go back to Chris Matthews, I loved what he said, because he was joking, and he really doesn't like Ted Cruz. He actually really sees him as fundamentally evil, and he looked at the Republican commenter, and he goes, and he's laughing about it. He said, in my opinion, an evil darkness will cover the country if Ted Cruz becomes the nominee. So, a shroud of darkness will envelop the United States if Ted Cruz. I have the same feeling. In fact, a neurologist wrote an article explaining why people are repulsed by Ted Cruz's face. And any single one of these, Tony, whether it's a two-person race or not, anyone that gets up there doesn't stand a chance in a real argument about facts with either Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton. And in fact, if we're gonna look at polling, most of the polling numbers have Bernie Sanders way ahead in a win against any Republican candidate, further ahead than Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, well, and we'll see. Again, polling being polling, we'll see how that holds. Interestingly, and I do find this interesting because I went to take a look at polling in South Carolina. Nobody's done any polling since the end of 2015, and here we are, not far out of of South Carolina, and we still don't have any recent polling, so we really don't know what's happening there. Two things very quickly in the last 15 minutes. Number one, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton will be debating in Milwaukee, Wisconsin this evening. Obviously, the dynamic changes. Martin O'Malley, of course, is gone. And so we come off what's the big mo in New Hampshire for Bernie Sanders. Depending on where the conversation goes this evening, obviously, and you're reading what I'm reading, it's all out there, that Hillary Clinton has a messaging problem, and the messaging problem spans every demographic except for older Democrats and wealthy Democrats. So how does she turn this around? I guess we have to wait and see. I'm not asking you what you think she'll do, because I'm not so sure that anybody knows, but is it the messaging, or we'll find out, is it the mess in Jersey?
Well, so her message is clear. Her message is, I can do the job. That's her message. I can do this job. And it's a message, it's just not enough of a message for
Well, yeah, we saw in the exit polling that wasn't a priority for people.
Yeah, it's not a priority. And in fact, there was an interview yesterday, I want to say on Chuck Todd's show, MTP Daily, and there was a woman on there, a reporter, who was talking. She was a Bernie supporter, and she switched to Hillary Clinton. And what she said, this is very important, because the words she used are very important. And I'm almost directly quoting, but it's a bit of a paraphrase. So I want to be careful in warning people about that. But what she said was that Hillary Clinton needs to reach out to the youth vote, or at least appear as if she's reaching out to the youth vote, right? So she wasn't talking like she was a pundit. She was talking like she was a strategist. And the strategy in a lot of these elections, which annoys all of us, seems to be, it doesn't really matter if you actually are for a certain segment of the population, as long as you appear that you're for a certain segment of. And so giving the advice to a campaign and saying, at the very least, we have to appear like we care about people, I don't really know.
Looks like we lost Zombeck again. Z, are you there? Apparently he's not there. So anyway, he certainly made his point, and glad that he did. Anyway, at this point, I think that what we need to do is listen to something that Richard Zombeck shared with everybody on social media this morning. The headline is, Unhinged TV anchor, Beyonce's Super Bowl show deprived little white girls of racial harmony. Her name, many of you know her, is Tomi Lahren, and what she had to say was just absolutely ridiculous, but I'll play it.
Welcome back for some final thoughts tonight. First it was hands up, don't shoot. Then it was burning down buildings and looting drugstores, all the way to Oscars So White. And now even the Super Bowl halftime show has become a way to politicize and advance the notion that Black lives matter more. This isn't about equality. This is about ramrodding an aggressive agenda down our throats and using fame and entertainment value to do so. Beyonce, really? What is the political message here? What is it they are trying to convey here? A salute to what? A group that used violence and intimidation to advance not racial equality but an overthrow of white domination? The Black Panthers, for those who don't know, were critical of Martin Luther King's nonviolent civil rights movement. They didn't believe in change through peace. They promoted violence instead. So congratulations, Beyonce. You made your statement. You should be proud of yourself. The Super Bowl, the most watched event on television. A game that brings Americans of every color, background, and political party together. A game where Black fans cheer next to white fans. A game where teammates work together as one regardless of race. A celebration of diversity rooted in a common bond. But forget that. These privileged Hollywood entertainment types are really something. Beyonce didn't reference the Black Panthers to bring about some kind of positive change. She did it to get attention. Good for you. You made headlines. You, just like President Obama, Jada Pinkett Smith, Al Sharpton, and so many others, just can't let America heal. Keep ripping off the historical Band-Aid. Why be a cultural leader when you can play the victim, right? Guess what, Beyonce? White people like your music, too. White people buy your songs on iTunes, memorize your lyrics, and admire your talent and beauty. Little white girls want to be like you just as little black girls do. But instead of recognizing that, you would rather perpetuate the great battle of the races. Your husband was a drug dealer. For 14 years, he sold crack cocaine. Talk about protecting black neighborhoods. Start at home. Those are my final thoughts. Thanks for watching. God bless you, God bless America, and take care.
Yeah, God bless you and God bless America. So I'm an almost pretty white woman, Z, who wants to further perpetuate the idea that white hatred exists and that anybody who dares to call out racism for what its ugliness still represents in this country, well, shame on them, especially if you're a celebrity.
Yeah, I can only hope that those are her final thoughts, like ever. Because I think she drained the reserve pool of thoughts with that. First of all, it's art. You can do what you want with art, whether or not you agree that a political statement belongs in the Super Bowl. And if you don't, then we shouldn't have political ads during the Super Bowl or really anything. And the underlying tone of her comment is so blatantly racist that I don't even think she realizes it.
Which is the sad reality of what's happening in this country as we deal with race. And, listen, at some level I was a little bit hopeful, although I'll be the first to admit very naive, that when President Obama was elected the first time, that maybe there was an opportunity, an entree even, to having a real discussion about race in this country, about transcending some of the hatred, about bridging some gaps. I don't want to get cliche heavy on you here, but I was very hopeful that something positive would happen, and it went in the exact opposite direction, to the point where, I even hate to say this out loud, I'm surprised that nobody has tried, literally tried to take the president's life. Not that he hasn't been threatened. We know he's been threatened. Every president is. But a public attempt has not been made on his life. White people, and the reason Donald Trump is doing so well, is that white people, especially white men, can't stand the idea of a black man succeeding in society still. And you and I both know that. Well, no, I won't speak for you. I know that's true. I see it every day, and it sickens me. And people like Tommy shouldn't even be allowed on an internet television show.
Well, they can do whatever they want. What's always more frightening to me is the number of people that listen to it. I think there were a lot of people, both African American and not, me being among them, so I'll only speak for myself. I was a little disappointed that, Obama was more Martin Luther King Jr. than Samuel L. Jackson. I was hoping for the angry black man to walk into Congress. I wanted to see that because I thought it was time, but the thing is, Tony, too, is that you really can't hold the guy accountable. There's very little he can address. It's not like he can walk in as the first black president and just start, taking things to a whole new level on African American issues. There are other issues, and he was inclusive.
Why can't he, Z? Why can't he? Why couldn't he?
Well, it's like saying Ted Cruz is going to be the best president in the United States because he has Christian values and he supports all Christians. And if you're a Jew, a Muslim, a Buddhist, or a Hindu, you can go F yourself because there's no room for you in this country. That's not the kind of dialogue I'm talking about. I'm not saying he needed to come in there and be a Black Panther, that he had to listen. I'm the first black president, and therefore we're only going to focus on issues that affect the African American community. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that he could have been, I think, much more bold in the way, and he did a couple of times. And he was raked over the coals by some, but applauded by others for having the audacity to address certain issues that deeply affect the African American community, especially when we were seeing the militarization of the police. We went through an entire year, and we're still in some respects the tail end of that. I just think he could have done more for the black community. That's all I'm saying. Not that he needed to exclude anybody, but I think he could have been more inclusive. I agree with you, but I think the level of racism in this country, anytime you say something, or anytime he would say something, he would be accused of only looking out for his own. It happened with Holder. It happens with Loretta Lynch. And Holder made very bold comments as almost like a surrogate of Obama. But as president of the United States, I think it's what would we let's go back in history a little bit, and what would the environment have been like if, and I'm not comparing race to religion, but what would have happened if Kennedy had gotten elected and started addressing the Catholicism and the Catholic agenda right out of the gate, when it was such a contentious vote because he was a Catholic, and there was so much fear around putting a Catholic in the White House that, if he had come in and said, hey, I'm having the Pope over for dinner, and we're going to change this country and stop this anti-Catholicism rage that's going on, that's really the only example I can come up with. And, again, I'm a white guy. I'm a middle-aged white guy, so what do I know?
Well, and as we have to get ready to wrap things up, we live in a different time than Kennedy. I mean, I understand your example, but I think that the reason that you're having trouble, you're struggling with finding a comparative example that makes sense is because there isn't one. And which is in some ways kind of my point, that the president, I believe, again, just could have done more. But on that we agree, and on that we'll end things. Although technically it was a tough day, I think content-wise it was a good day. So if people want to find out more information, Z, how can they go ahead and do that?
They can find everything at tnztalk.com, to follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, download our archive, subscribe to iTunes, and you can also go to our support page to see the many different ways that you can support us through your actions or whatever you feel like. And again, that's tnztalk.com.
All right, that's going to clean it up for us today. Michael and Rihanna, thanks again for stepping in while we were trying to get back into the show. Fortunately, we did. With any luck, tomorrow will be a whole lot cleaner. In the meantime, everybody have a great day. And as always, I ask that you be well.